Hi, I'm Coach Oyama. I specialize in, or I have a passion to help you improve. I specialize in macro coaching. Here's my contact if you want it. And I do all my coaching for free. All you got to do is DM me. So yeah, these are the teams I've worked on. 27th and open division. Let's go, boys. All right, needless to say, let's get right into the gameplay. I haven't seen it yet. I did read the review or the comments earlier about Ryan v Ryan matchups. I'm gonna provide a different perspective on this from a top level. Okay, so not necessarily a top level because I like doing high level macro, and in Plat, it's probably going to be mostly mechanics that we're going to be working on. So let's talk about, okay, from the beginning though, immediately, one thing, I like looking at the things that you can control in your team composition and building off of those. So in your team, in your team composition, you don't have speed. Speed is really a useful thing for Reinhardt, so then you can outduel the enemy Reinhardt, so then you can rotate to the enemies. But since you don't have speed, you have a lot of healing, so you can hold ground really well against an enemy Reinhardt. Especially, you don't know what they're playing, so in your head, always be ready to have, um, from a macro standpoint, I'm going to just say this to you because and this will be your first point that I'm going to emphasize. At the very beginning of the game, I want you to look at your team comp and think about the different things that can happen, who you're going to be playing against. If you see a pharmacy, what are you going to do? If you see a ball, what are you going to do? If you see a Junker Queen, how differently are you going to play from a Reinhardt? And just have those options in your head. And as soon as you see a Reinhardt, I want you to kind of, even like, I say do it by feeling. Have the feeling, have enough intuition to be able to play. But some people, learning things, they love memorizing tables. If you memorize the table and if you do like full statistics on like who you're playing against and how you need to change your behavior, so be it. Whatever it takes to get to that point. But when you see an enemy Reinhardt, you know it's brawl versus brawl. And in brawl versus brawl, overall, standing still in a good position will win you the fight because you're in a stalemate against the enemy Ryan unless you outduel him or he outduels you. So you can use positioning to your advantage. I'm assuming that you don't actually need to fight for this high ground, actually. Even though both of your DPS are very good at taking advantage of angles and range, if you played on point here, they would not have enough utility to break through into your team on point, and you would cap the point and eventually just win because of the objective. So consider that rotation next time. It's probably going to be very hard in Plat to get your entire team to do it unless you're calming. But as a main tank, you do have a little bit more flexibility and authority over what your team is doing. Okay, needless to say, let's go back to that point of like looking at the team composition. So you're running forward, you're taking space, all good and good. As soon as you see the soldier, it should register in your mind that if you guys are playing slower, you need to address the fact that he will start to shred your shield and he'll start to shred your backline if you lose your shield in a spot in the open. Now you see the enemy Reinhardt, and so you know you can stand still and win the fight because you have a lot of heals. You see the Ana. The Ana in this composition, so like they were talking about before, is one of the big win conditions for the enemy team. If they land a single Ana sleep dart or anti, your entire team's going to crumple over and it's going to be very, very bad because they can't rotate anywhere on this map for the most part. So you need to hold your ground, and if you hold your ground, so now we're getting this top-down thing. If you hold your ground out here, since you've taken way more space than the enemy team, you'll probably win this fight because of the high ground. And then you can cap the point, or your team can cap the point while you're holding the ground, and it'll have compounding effects of holding the high ground. In this very specific instance, of course, it'll change on different maps. It'll change with different people on your team comp and the enemy team comp. But looking at the enemies, they both have a very spammy backline. You have, or DPS lineup. You have a very spammy DPS lineup. Your edge on the enemy is your advantage over the enemy is that you can stand still way harder than they can. You also kind of have cleanse if you get slept or antied, but don't rely on that. The one thing that I want you to do is, now that we have this like thing of different possibilities, I want you to go out into the team fight and say, okay, I need to hold space against these enemies. What are the threats to me holding space? Ryan charge, enemy DPS whittling me down too much. I need to manage how much shield I'm using versus how much damage I'm taking, because I can take a lot of damage here and heal it all back. But mostly the Ana cooldowns, if you get hit by any of the Ana cooldowns, and the only thing keeping you from being an owl player is the fact that you aren't doing what an owl player does. There's nothing physically, that's why I love Overwatch. You don't need to build muscle or anything, you just need to know and act like an owl player. So an owl player will never let an Ana use a cooldown on them or hit a cooldown on them, and never let a Rein charge past them into their back line unless it's a calculated decision. So for you, I would say, just as a general rule, hold your space against this team composition, because we just went over that's what you have to do in this team composition. And it'll probably change next round depending on who and what map we're on, or who's on the enemy team and your team. But the first fight is most important. That's why I'm spending a lot of time on this, just out of the random fact. But never let that Ana hit a cooldown. Never let that Rein charge against you. Your win condition is holding space on that high ground or on point. In that case, you guys were on high ground. And so have those in mind, and you'll better be able to see consistency. Of course, I think it's not too hard to block an Ana nade and Sleet Dart, but if you're looking for it more so, I'm not like a Rein specialist that I play a lot of Rein and can give you the best tips on Rein, but always I say if you're looking for something rather than forgetting about it, it'll be so much better. Okay, so you got this fight going on with the Rein up top. I guess we can go over ult tracking. So yeah, let's think about when are the enemy going to have their ults, especially for you on a Rein v Rein brawl. Rein v Rein brawls are very heavily affected by ults. Nano, Rein Shatter, Beat, DPS ults aren't as relevant in this situation because you can just shield both of them. But keep in mind, after the first fight, after resetting, go into the next fight knowing, because it's like that list of different possible things that could happen. They might have Shatter, they might have Beat, and so how do you play differently because of those? That's up to you to decide. I would say just account for them. Don't go too far out in the open with if you know they have Beat. Be ready to shield the Reinhardt Shatter, and don't get too low, and don't let your shield get too low if they have the Reinhardt Shatter, or else he's just gonna you know, like break your shield and then shatter. I'm putting less emphasis onto the second and third fights here because a lot of fights are dictated by ultimates, and it's simply in knowing the ultimates and just using a little bit of brain power to think out how the ultimate affects you, or you and your team and your decision. That'll turn the tide of the fight. Yeah, so a lot of this is ult rolling. It's very high level to think about, and I wouldn't say that's what you should be like very focused about. But the things that you should focus on are, one, your mentality going into this, knowing what you should be thinking about. Two is the Rein, or like under that, because very similar, is blocking the cooldowns, the Rein charge, the Ana sleep, the Ana anti. Yeah, and then addressing the ultimates that will actually affect you, like the Reinhardt Shatter and Beat. So yeah, you lose first fight, it's the chances of winning the point are significantly lower after you lose first fight. So I'd love to just only focus on the first points, especially because most of your value is going to be coming out of winning this first fight. This is just like a rule of Koth if you're curious. Okay, so I like how you take this high ground here. I really like this. Perhaps that you didn't know, or you didn't calculate this out, but your team composition is very spammy. I like the Ash Soldier lineup. It's pretty decent. Your team lineup isn't that bad, actually. You guys do have the Ana, you have the Mora, so now it's even more important for you to start blocking cooldowns from that Ana, the enemy Ana. And they have speed, but they can't really use their speed if their Lucio, first of all, isn't with their Reinhardt, and second of all, the Reinhardt can't gap close, or else he has to rotate across this entire trudge. So you just standing here and existing is actually providing a lot of value, like a surprisingly amount of value for your team, because you're able to hold this high ground. You guys get the Lucio pick from you standing up on the high ground. Okay, so now I'm gonna say watch out for this pin. Patience is key, young one. If you're winning the team fight, don't make drastic decisions and risks. Don't take drastic risks to continue winning. You can just go with the flow and play on point. Because if you were to go with the flow and play on point here, the Rein has to look at you, and he has to overextend to contest the point, and you can just kind of draw him out and play the fight in your favor. Because their DPS have to fight the enemies, and their supports won't be able to help the Rein because their attention is so stretched, especially since it's only an Ana, stretched to help their DPS and the Reinhardt player at once. So you're creating so many cracks in their team composition that eventually your win condition here of the angles will overcome the fact that they have to like overcome the angles. And the Reinhardt will either crack, or your DPS will crack the enemy DPS. Yeah, I'll say that much. I think that's a good like second point here of when you're winning, don't try extra hard to keep on winning. Don't take risks. Don't take unnecessary risks just to win the team fight and be a hero. You can just slow down and just, you know, like enjoy your time on the beach, smell the roses while you're winning. I guess that's also kind of situational, but like in this situation where you have the point and all you got to do is stall for as long as possible, and there's little risk of the enemy turning the fight, and unless you guys make a mistake, you know, opening yourself up for those risks was a heavy mistake. I'm assuming, yeah, you guys are going to lose this fight because they just have so many angles on you. Okay, going into this fight, fooling the Reinhardt. Again, a lot of the shatters can be prevented if you know when that shatter is coming out. So, for example, you're close to shatter here, so he probably is close to shatter as well. It's safe to assume that he might have ultimate, and I would rather see you like start shielding and lose value because you're like addressing that risk that he has ultimate, and rather than especially in this or in this situation where they're so heavily pushed up and you're about to push through, the Reinhardt is really overextended and he has to do something drastic. If you block the shatter because you knew it might be coming, that would be so much more value out of not blocking the shatter and this outcome here. So let me see how you retake this point. Maybe there's something to see here. Okay. So one hard thing, this is why Lucio is so good on Reinhardt, because I can tell that you're kind of just stuck on point wondering what the hell you can do, and the answer is nothing. So you're going to be trying to squeeze water out of a dry towel here, and it's going to be nearly impossible. And it's in the fact that the enemy Reinhardt isn't like absolutely contesting you and squeezing the heck out of you guys, because they can literally just be like a cobra or a python or whatever squeezes and just sit there and squeeze all the resources out of you because of their angles, and it's going to feel really bad, and you guys are going to have to do something drastic to be able to get it back. Here you outplay the Reinhardt really well with that charge here, and you do a good job of existing on point and not being too drastic in your efforts. I really like that play of you just sitting on point. Ultimately, it's not the best play to maximize your chances of winning on the macro, but I don't think that your team would have the amount of teamwork and tools necessary at their disposal to be able to follow up if you tried to do something to maximize your chances, your theoretical chances of winning, like at an owl level. But you know what works. So just building good habits. It's good to know that you have that that idea of staying alive on point will be able to net your team more outcome or more progress on the point here. Going into this fight, again, I didn't even look at the enemy Reinhardt, and I saw that you're at 85% shatter, so watch out for that shatter. It's in the small things, you know, the compounding small things. It's the habits, not the fact that you block one shatter, but the fact that you're going to be blocking 20 shatters over the course of like 20 hours because you're more aware of the shatters. And that's like a huge percent increase from blocking 0 out of 20. So in the end, it didn't even matter. But if we, let me see if I can try to help you. Is there anything that you could have done in this team fight that'll help you win? Okay, so let's talk about your win condition in your entire team, because I think this is a really good point. At the very beginning of the game, when you're addressing who is on which team and what map are you playing, the win condition on your team is going to be brawling to hold angles. And how do we accomplish that? By brawling to take space for those angles. So if your DPS are set up over here, which your soldier is, your Ashe is kind of on this risky, like low risk, low reward flank that I don't like at all, or high risk, low reward flank. But if they were both set up here and you held this chokehold right here, and they never got through the chokehold because you're just holding shield and the enemy Rein has a really hard time breaking through, your DPS are going to pop off so hard. And it's not in the fact that you're carrying, it's in the fact that you're enabling them to carry and playing with your team win condition and going with the flow. So analyzing your team compositions just for 3 seconds, you should be able to better have an idea of that. And so what goes on in this fight to okay, so here, yeah, it might seem like chaos, but to me, I'm just looking at the overall image. You guys are losing angles, actually. And do you lose this fight because they have beat? Okay, so you lose this fight because they have beat. Let's talk about when to use your ultimate. Now that you know like how to counter the enemy ultimate, use your ultimate to initiate a fight. Use your ultimate in the mid fight if it's still winnable. I think this one was kind of unlucky because both your teammates died right as you started to use your ultimate, but it doesn't make sense for you to use your ultimate in a 1v5 when you can save it for the next fight in a 5v5, because then you won't have to solo carry deadlift your team. You can use them with the flow. Like we're in a river, you might as well just take the canoe and go down river than go up river, and that's using your ultimate in this next fight here. And so another concept is dying early or getting out, or die or get out when you need to reset, so then you don't lose time. So it's kind of about timing sometimes, literally just the timing on when you should use your ultimate. So if you had your ultimate here, that'd be really nice. Otherwise, I like this rotation. You have a good idea of brawling into the enemy team here and limiting line of sight rather than going to the high ground because you're limited on time. One thing that I do want to point out is why this is a good thing. Why this is a good thing is because you gather, or you take so much space out here, and you're enabling your DPS at the same time that you're like putting in work. So it's going with the flow of your team's win condition. The bad thing though, I can already tell, I can smell it, the replay's coming to a close. It looks like you guys are going to win this fight. The Reinhardt shatters and kills your backline. That's the one thing. Again, addressing how you need to play versus how you should adjust your mindset when you're playing. Okay, so one, look at, hold tab. Hold tab, look at how you need to adjust your playing, what you're up against and what you need to do. So Rein v Rein and Ana. Especially, you need to block the cooldowns from Ana. You need to address where Rein is and block their shatters. 2, let's go over your ultimate usage. We only saw it once, but it's a very big thing that you can immediately improve from, so it's something that I want to mention, is don't use your ult at the end of the fight. Don't use your ult at the very... you can use it at the very beginning. Just don't use it when the fight is lost. Address that, and as you get more awareness, you'll be able to identify when your teammates die. I very heavily recommend for you, especially as... lower ranked players, if you go under sound, general, play sound when enemy eliminated and when teammate eliminated, turn those on, because then you'll be able to, like, it'll become muscle memory. When you hear that sound, you'll look at the top right and say, okay, it's a 4v5, we have less of a chance of winning this team fight. And even though that's very dumbed down and there's so many variables to think about, you can't think about those variables in the moment, and that's a way better system of rounding the chances of winning rather than just going, I'm gonna ult, and then not realizing that 4 of your teammates already died and you're 1v5ing and you're gonna have to kill 5 people to win the team fight, rather than if 5 of your teammates are alive and you kill 1 and then your team kills the rest. So know when to ult. Not even about like hitting a good shatter, know when to hit a good shatter, because I've seen multiple instances where my Reinhardt hits a 5-man shatter, says, where were you guys? And we're all dead. And it's like, that wasn't a good shatter, was it? Because of the timing, even though you hit 5 and that would have been a team fight, team winning shatter. And 3, I would say, because there's a lot of things that we can go over, but I honestly think those 2 are very important ones that you should be conscious of, because they go so far in depth. I'm gonna say identify the win con. Identify win condition for your team. So what does your team do better than the enemy team? And if what does your team do worse? And then do everything that you can do better, way better. Sometimes it's literally just one person. Sometimes it's an idea or concept. In this case, it's enabling your DPS to have better angles. And so how do you fit in this? I can fit in by making space. How do I make space? I make space by brawling through a chokehold or forcing point, or doing these certain things that'll make space for my DPS and allow my supports to enable me to be able to take that space. And eventually, if we get more space in the enemy DPS, then we'll win, because we have our win con more active than the enemies. I think that's it. Yeah, it might be quite repetitive from before, but hopefully that helped you out a little bit. If you have any questions, just feel free, because I feel like there's a lot more to explain, and over a longer period of time on the fundamentals of what and there's a lot of like small questions. So yeah, good luck in your